Hello, I'm Russell Sturgis. I'm the founder and principal of the Centre for Western Mindfulness. Welcome to part 4 in the blog series that I've been doing on HALE, which is a very popular and successful mindfulness tool that we incorporate in our program, Pathways to Mindfulness, that we deliver through the Centre for Western Mindfulness. In this session that we're doing today in this blog, I'm looking at the fourth element of HALE, HALE being the acronym, and we're looking at E. So let's just recap real quickly. So H stands for halting and observing what's going on, the facts of what's going on. If there's been a trigger of some kind, this is about being able to stop and have a look at all of the facts associated with the trigger without giving any of it a meaning. I talk about using full stops, which we've talked about all the way through. Just state the facts of what's happening physically, what's happening mentally, what's happening emotionally, what's happening within your senses, but just the facts. Don't add on anything. Then you've got A, which is to halt and observe and consider the after effect, given that this is generally a habitual thing that you're dealing with or something that you've experienced many times before. So you're very familiar with how it plays out. And so this is about just taking time to think about where this is going to end up. If I do what I've always done, I always get what I've always got. Then you've got L, which is about considering the whole notion that there's a loving alternative. And so you're going to be exploring what would be more serving for me in this particular situation. Okay, now E is about taking the easy option, and that sort of flies in the face of our Judeo-Christian culture that those of us in the West have been exposed to, because it's sort of based on the idea of no pain, no gain. And so it's like we've got to work hard in order to be able to get a result. You know, I grew up with an adage in my childhood that said, work will win when wishy-washy wishing won't. And it sort of alludes to this whole idea that an easy option doesn't count if you're wanting to have something be different. So when we look at the difference between what we're doing in taking a mindfulness approach to change versus somebody who's doing coaching, if I was to create an acronym for change management with coaching, where ours could be HALE, for example, a coaching one I decided could be SALAD. And I use S instead of H. They're the same thing. S is about stop. And the first three things are pretty well going to be the same. So you have to stop. A is what the impact in my life is if I do what I've always done. L is what would be a more serving or loving alternative. So far, we're on the same page pretty well. Where we go with the easy option, the SALAD acronym, the A represents developing an accountability plan. So this is about what I need to do, when I need to do it, by who I'm going to be responsible to in terms of giving feedback about my progress. So there's an accountability plan. And then finally, we have D, which is about determination. That's about the willpower. It's about the effort that goes into the discipline to be able to bring about the changes in behaviour. Now that sounds like a very, very different model to the easy option. Now, the difference between the SALAD model and the HALE model is the amount of force needed to control the mind in order to change behaviours. We've all done the willpower thing. So if you've done diets or exercising, you've been in those situations where you've used force of mind to be able to change your behaviours. Unfortunately for most of us, we've also had the wheels come off and crashed and burned. And so we sort of know what that experience is. Here's the thing with the easy option. It does require some willpower. It's just that it's way less than what's required in the SALAD model. So the easy option, in terms of the discipline that's required there, is that every single time your trigger presents itself, it has the expectation that you're going to do H, A, and L first. So you've been presented with a scenario, you've done H, A, and L, and now you're going to stop and consider in this moment what the actual easiest thing is for me to do. Is it to respond how I've always responded before? Or is the easy thing in this moment for me to actually act in a more loving and sustainable way? Now, it's really important to understand why either of those options is going to be serving. And that's what makes this successful, but it also is what people don't quite understand about how this can actually work. So let's look at 3 scenarios in terms of the choices that you can make with this. If you make the choice to honour the loving alternative, and that comes easiest for you, great, then that's successful. And that's ultimately about the fact that you've created the new neural pathway, you know where you're heading, and this is the choice that you're going to be aligned with. All well and good. If you choose the habitual way of doing it, then you know you're going to suffer the consequences. And the nice thing about this, and I know this seems weird me saying the nice thing about it, but what happens is when you have that moment of experiencing that, you know, the old after effect, you can stop and go, well, hang on a second, what I am aware of is that there's a loving alternative. And the gift for which I can be really grateful for being in this place of feeling the pain of my choice is that I'm aware that this is what I don't want moving forward. So by virtue of experiencing what I am, I'm becoming clear about what I don't want to experience, and therefore I can actually be grateful for what's going on in this particular situation. And here's the interesting thing, is that the thing that often happens when we understand that there's choices and we revert to our old patterns of behaviour, what often happens is we go through shame and guilt about the fact that we couldn't do it better. The thing is that if you're maintaining an awareness of gratitude, you can't entertain shame and guilt. Those 2 experiences can't share the same mental space. And so what you can do is choose to go to the place where you see the gift in the choice, because it's helping you to become clear about what you don't want and helping to fuel your choice along the lines of what it is that you do want. The other one that we all commonly experience is when we choose the loving alternative but find ourselves reverting to our old patterns of behaviour. And of course, when that happens, once again, we are confronted with the shame and guilt scenario. And what I would suggest to you is that you use the same gratitude strategy that I just talked about, and that's absolutely necessary in terms of choosing where we do want to go. Now, generally speaking, the learning curve looks a little bit like this. You've gone through H, A, and L. You're confronted with a trigger, and the easy option is to go down the old path. You get to the end of the old path and you go, yep, don't like what this feels like. And you go, the loving alternative could have been a better option. And we've just talked about that. What happens is that may happen several times. And then there's a point where you find yourself with the trigger and you're halfway through your old pattern of behaviour, your old habits, and you go, do you know what? I really want to be better aligned with the loving alternative. So what happens is halfway through you start to realign your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviours to match or be better aligned with what the loving alternative was that you created when you did HALE. Now, that really reinforces the new neural pathway very, very strongly by virtue of having made that change. When you went through that previous scenario where you caught yourself after when you were in your pain, that sort of helps, but in this place, it helps very strongly. Then you have a scenario where you're presented with your trigger and you review your HALE, and hopefully you've done that in those other scenarios, and sometimes we don't remember to do it, but you've come to the point now where the trigger's presented itself enough where you remembered HALE, and this time you make the decision to engage the loving alternative instead of the habitual habit. The loving alternative becomes the easy option. And so what ends up happening is that the more that you start to then make that choice of the loving alternative as the easy option, the old habit begins to fade away and it actually disappears. So what ends up becoming the new habit is the loving alternative. So you've actually replaced the habit. Now, unfortunately, what we've noticed is that there is something that you need to be aware of, and that is whenever we're confronted with a major, and I'm talking about a serious stressor of some kind or another, that can basically put a halt to the loving alternative, and all of a sudden we find ourselves jumping right back into our old habitual ways of doing things. And of course, the reason being is that our old habitual ways of doing things were established as survival strategies. And so when we're in a push comes to shove situation, our fright and flight mechanism wants us to go into survival mode. So we automatically just dig up that old habit, and here we find ourselves reverting back to our old set of behaviours. Now, once again, there's a temptation to want to have guilt and shame and buy into the idea of failure. Whereas what needs to be done in this particular scenario is to stop and look at what the true nature of what the trigger was for you to go back to that place. And once again, observe the facts about that and maybe come up with a new loving alternative in terms of how you deal with a stressor of that extreme. But once again, you're going to come back to the place where you go, do you know what? I haven't felt that sort of pain for a very long time. And in this particular situation, I've really become aware of it, and I'm much clearer that this isn't the thing that I want to have as part of my reality. So in fact, I can be really grateful for what's occurred right now, because it's just reinforced very strongly in my psyche and my consciousness what it is that I really do want. And that is the experience of joy and love and peace as a way of life, as opposed to the things that I've been experiencing before. So you can see that the easy option has the potential to bring us to this place where we make the choice of the loving alternative. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not something that happens instantly. It's not a quick fix. And unfortunately, it's one of the challenges that we face in our modern society, is that we have quick fixes, and we're looking for that in terms of everything that where we're presented with pain, we're wanting a quick fix. This isn't a quick fix, but it does work and it is sustainable. I want to say to you that all of these triggers that we are confronted with, our fears, anger, resentment, depression, guilt, grief, all of those things that push our buttons and take us out of our stillness, can all be managed through HALE by using this very simple tool where we halt and observe the facts of what's going on that's causing us to experience what it is that's taking us out of our peace. The after effect and observing the facts of what we've experienced in the past if we use our old response to what's going on. What the loving alternatives are that we've considered, and maybe that we've got one that we really think is a absolute key one for us in terms of the one that we would like to adopt when these situations arise. And then E is remembering the power of taking the easy option to be able to create new neural pathways, because at the end of the day, that's what we're wanting to do, is to have a new neural pathway given that we have a new destination, which is the loving alternative. Thanks for following this short series on this wonderful tool of being able to live mindfully. I just want to remind you, at the Centre for Western Mindfulness, our definition of mindfulness is remembering in each moment that you have a choice. And that's what we're talking about here. Choice to have more loving kindness, or to be kinder to yourself, to have more loving kindness for others, and to have kindness for the planet. Thank you for watching. If you want to know more about the work that we do, please go to our website, westernmindfulness.com.au, and I look forward to some more blog series. And I'm going to just give you a little hint that in the next series of blogs that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be looking at how to become the observer and the power of observation to change reality. Anyway, I'll speak to you soon. Bye.